Hello, my name is Matthew, and I just got home from work a little bit ago, and I've done my chores. I took a shower, I sat down just to watch a video for a minute to see what I could watch, and I came across a video by the Vlog Brothers, and it was a video um, from John to his brother Hank showing his most valuable books. And I don't often, um, I don't watch very many of their videos, but of course, um, a title, "My Most Valuable Books," interested me, and it was neat enough. It was fun to watch, him showing off his books. And afterwards, it just got me thinking about my most valuable books. And John does break it into obvious categories. So the books that are the most expensive, and then also the books that um, have attached the most sentimental value. And it doesn't even need to be a bound, published, uh, widely available book. It could be something that's just deeply personal. And so I was thinking about it, and I went around my shelves, and I had obvious things that came to mind that I was looking for, and then other things that I said, oh, of course, this would be uh, one of those books that I would never get rid of. And so I just want to um, show a bunch of books that are incredibly valuable to me. And I don't think there's too much of an order except for maybe the top three or something like that. And so I'll start with a book that I don't have too much sentimental value for, but I think is maybe one of the most expensive books that I have. I haven't checked, and I don't care too much about with the going prices on eBay or anything like that. But this book is a first edition Charles Dickens. It's a first edition American edition of The Life of Our Lord, and I found it in a charity shop in high school. It was this little place that had all these little books, and I found it rummaging around, um, and it wasn't expensive at all. It was like $1. And I got home and I was looking at it and inspecting it, and it's a first edition, so really cool. I have a reader's copy because I enjoy reading this book. Another book that I think that I know was published and made pretty much only to be a collector's item is The Tree of Codes by Jonathan Safran Foer. And this was expensive when I bought it. It was $40, but um, it's striking when you open it. The actual content of the book um, is not anything literary, but it has all these die cuts, and it's really clear that it's expensive to make. Um, has had a limited run, and not entirely very easy to read. And it's funny because I was just over at my friend Ben's house, maybe just after the new year, and he says, I want to show you something. So he goes over to a shelf and he takes this envelope and he pulls out this book. And I was holding it, and I was and he didn't say anything. I'm just holding it, and I was so confused because I thought, did I lend Ben this book? But he had, I had shown this to Ben. He knows about it, and so he just put an eBay marker in. So anytime it comes up, and he found a really good price for it, and just um, uh, bought it to hold and see if maybe he can sell it in the future. But it was so funny because I was looking at it like, I don't remember where'd you get this book when you bought it. So speaking of Ben, a few years ago, um, because he's in a rock band, and he went on a European tour. He had a festival in Germany, and he went to Florence and uh, a couple other countries. He was spending his time in Europe, and before he left, he said, "Do you want anything?" And I said, "Well, just get me a book. Just find a book for me." So he comes back, and I love it. This is just a book that I prize. It's Anna Karenina by Tolstoy, which is one of my favorite novels. I don't talk about Tolstoy too much, just because I haven't read him very recently. But this is half. It's half of Anna Karenina, um, translated into the Italian. So you can see the Italian there, and then the Italian in the back. And he said he was in Florence, and he walked by this set up table, just in the street, some um, vendor or little marketplace, and he saw it. He knew that I liked Tolstoy, and um, knew that it's just such a great um, anecdote of a story. So probably won't be able to read it in Italian. It's only half of the book, but I love it. So this is another book that I most likely will never read. um, it is The Catcher in the Rye translated into Farsi, and maybe some Farsi speakers out there can read that. And I had my friend, old friend Maury, um, from my early 20s, mid 20s, something like that. And she was going to um, uh, Iran. She was going home. And again, um, there was a whole group of friends, a bunch of people that knew each other. And she says, "Does anybody want anything?" And I said, "Well, if you're over there, pick me up a book." And so it was the funniest thing. We're sitting at a coffee shop, and she gets back. She's back from her trip, and I had the book on the table that I was reading, and she gives me this and says, "This is your present. It's The Catcher in the Rye in Farsi." And as we were sitting there, um, she picked it up and started reading it. She hadn't opened up the pages since she had bought it for me. Look at this. Okay. A Farsi bookmark. And just in the time that we were sitting there, a bunch of people, um, she pulls her head out of the book and says, "This is really good. Can I borrow this?" And so she takes it immediately. And it was like months later, she comes back and gave it back to me. And this is an old friend that has passed away. Just this past year, she got breast cancer, and just quickly fell victim, um, and passed away. So incredibly valuable to me. So, again, involving Ben, we're over. And again, this is like early. We're in our early 20s, something like that, and we're over at like Ben's friend's house, which was like an apartment. And there's a roommate, and there's a couple people in the apartment, and there's this person there, and Ben says, somehow it comes up that I am a fan of Marcel Proust, that I have been reading Remembrance of Things Past. I hadn't read the whole thing at the time. I was just reading through the volumes and really enjoying it. And the roommate says that they have the box set, and just says, "Do you want it?" And brings out this thing and just says, "Yeah, like I had to take a class on it. We had to get the book. I never read it. I'm never going to read it. I don't want it. You just want to take it." And so it's this incredible I'm sure you've seen it. It's just the Moncrief translation um, of the whole of the work. And this is the book, this is the box set where I finally um, read through all the volumes. Loved it. But the moment, sitting there and someone bringing this out and having read either two or three volumes of the book, um, and being presented with this, and I'm sure this is also um, monetarily valuable, but it's something that I'll never get rid of. It's just a wonder to have and a great story. Now, the reason that I was a fan of Proust is because of my old friend Bob. And I've told this story before. I'm in my late teenage years. I meet someone at a coffee shop that starts talking to me. I was functionally illiterate. I didn't read anything. I didn't read for pleasure. I read begrudgingly and mechanically in school as an obligation. It felt like a punishment. And I struck up, as a teenager, I struck up a friendship with a man in his late 60s, early 70s that completely changed my life. The conversations that we would have. Him just talking about books, telling me stories. Just starts talking about um, David Copperfield or whatever, and I would just sit and listen and go, oh my God, like that sounds really interesting. Every time he talked, I just wanted to hear more, or wanted to go and start experiencing what he was sharing with me. And so the reason that I ended up with the box set of Proust is because Bob gave me his copy of Remembrance of Things Past. And so this is, let's see, Swan's Way, Within a Budding Grove, and Germante's Way, the Moncrief translation. And this is volume 1. Maybe there are 2 or 3 volumes, I'm not sure. But this is Bob's old book. Bob also has passed away years ago. He's dead now. His remnants of when I was a painter. But I was reading this and loving this, and then later on acquired the box set. Okay. And a couple more Bob books. This is his copy of Heraclitus, translated by Philip Wheelwright. And Bob would quote it. He would just like recite passages of it. Let's see. There is exchange of all things for fire, and of fire for all things, as there is of wares for gold, and of gold for wares. The universe, which is the same for all, has not been made by any god or man, but always has been, is, and will be, an ever-living fire, kindling itself by regular measures and going out by regular measures. And the books that I have by Bob also have his marginalia, little notes that he has written, or check marks for passages that he liked. It's amazing. So it's a one of a kind. It's his big stain there. Bob dropped something. Another Bob book. This is A Vision by W.B. Yeats. And I've never been able to make heads or tails of this thing. It even says, where does it say it? It says a packet for Ezra Pound. Yeah. So, a packet for Ezra Pound. I love the poetry of Yeats. I've read several of his plays by Yeats. This has beautiful passages, strange enigmatic passages. It's just a very, very strange book. And this is Bob's book. When I moved into the tiny house, I had a little book pedestal, and this was presented on it. I don't have that anymore. And I also have another copy. I got just another copy just in case this falls apart for some reason. And then this is Bob's copy of the Norton Anthology of English Literature. It's completely worn out. Like a year or two ago, I started a series reading through it and making videos talking about it. You can see how far I got. Again, this is Bob's copy. I remember I went to visit him and his wife when they moved to South Carolina years ago, and him and his wife were they were brilliant literary people, and they enjoyed spending time reading poetry and reading poetry to each other. And I sat down and they played a game where I can't remember if it was this exact book, but they would open it up and one person would start reciting a poem. And it was Bob and Kathy, Bob's wife Kathy. And one would start reciting the poem, and then the game was that the other person, by recollection, could keep reciting the poem. Not just know who it was or what the poem was, but to be able to recite that passage. I just sat there like an idiot. So this is number 2, and it's actually it's the number 1 book that's properly a book. But there's been a bit of a trend. Books that have been given to me by friends or people that, books that have been given to me by friends. And so this is one of, I think, 16, and it's the complete works of Guy de Maupassant. And this was a gift from my friend Ben. He went to Nashville, I believe. I mentioned that he was in a band. He was in Nashville recording an album. And he comes back, calls me up. We're going to meet at the coffee shop where we always met. And he goes, come up, I'm back and we can meet. And he has this great big box. And he goes, this is your present. And I open it up, and there are 16 of these individually wrapped. So, and of course, the reason that he got it is that I love Mampassan. For the longest time, I was just reading all the short stories, reading all the novels. I was always talking Ben's ear off about Mampassan. It's just the most phenomenal, thoughtful, generous present. It's just amazing. I have these on the top shelf of my bookshelf. I go back to them. I have not read through all. They all look identical. I haven't read everything in it, but amazing. My most valuable collection of books is these from my friend Ben. And then Bob is the name that has been the most recurring throughout this list. And I don't know if I've talked about this before, but like I said, Bob was always talking about books and always recommending books. And I started, every time I would read a book that he would recommend, he would always just start talking about another book. And I was in college at the time, maybe a senior or something. And I got the idea, after a while, I started taking notes. We would sit together and I would write these lists. And I started saving them and compiling them. And Bob moved away. He moved to South Carolina. And I would visit. I would go down about once a year, talk about the things that I'm reading, talk about the dogs and his golf game and all that. And I suppose it was the last time that I saw him. I made this, and I took all the lists that I had, and I went to Kinko's, one of those copy shops that I don't think exists anymore, and printed out and bound all of the books that Bob had recommended to me, or talked about, or mentioned, where I had written it down. And I brought it down to show him, and so throughout this, so it's just a list of books that Bob and I had talked about, or he had mentioned in our conversation. And throughout, there's notes by me, because we sat together and I showed it to him, and it's alphabetized, so it's all these. So here we start with H. Joseph Heller, Catch 22. Hemingway, The Sun Also Rises, Farewell to Arms. James Hogg, The Private Memoirs and Confessions of a Justified Sinner. Victor Hugo, Toilers of the Sea, Les Miserables. Washington Irving, Henry James, James Joyce, Kafka, William Kennedy, Jack Kerouac, Ken Casey, Rudyard Kipling, D.H. Lawrence, Harper Lee, Norman Mailer, Thomas Mann, Somerset Maugham, Guy de Maupassant, Herman Melville, Henry Miller, Nabokov, Joyce Carol Oates. And then there's handwritten notes, because as we're talking, he's saying things, and I'm writing down other names and recommendations, and there's little notes from Bob where he was putting things in. And so it's a time capsule of at least what I recorded of all the things that he mentioned, and you can see, it's a fairly substantial list. It just keeps going on like that. Daniel Defoe, Don DeLillo, Henry de Montfrey, Thomas de Quincey, the Marquis de Sade, G.V. de Senny, Philip K. Dick, Charles Dickens, Dennis Diderot, John Dos Passos, Dostoevsky, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, Alexander Dumas, George Eliot, Ralph Ellison, on and on and on. So, Jane Austen, Balzac, Julian Burns, J.M. Barrie, Donald Barthelme, Samuel Beckett, the Brontes are in there. Everything that he ever talked about. It's incredible. So those are my most valuable books. It's been fun sharing some stories and showing off the books. Please leave a comment about anything that I had to say, and also your most valuable books. If you're inclined to make videos, I think it's a fun video to make as well. So thank you for watching. Please leave a comment if you would like, and